So Amma says that when we have this compassion in our hearts, definitely both men and women will become equal and rise above the differences. Amma was saying about a story in which I would like to narrate about once there was a doctor, a surgeon, and he was always busy in his office and his work. And what he did was he did not find satisfaction in what he was doing, but still he was doing it mechanically. And one day, as he was driving home, his car got some mechanical problem, and he pulled over on the side of the highway. And as some of you know, in the U.S., mostly nobody would stop and do anything if you have a breakdown. So he was standing there. It was a cold, rainy day, and all the other cars were passing by. And what happened was suddenly, after 10-15 minutes later, he did not know what to do, and he was calling it's called the AAA, and where they would send the mechanic. So the mechanic did not come for a long time, and they said because it's a rainy day and it's busy, it'll take about an hour to 2 hours. So he was just waiting there, and it was cold, and his engine had died. And half an hour later, a car pulled over, and a woman stepped out of the car. And naturally, he became a little bit tense, thinking that a woman might be there to extort something from him or ask him for something. But as the woman came to him, she asked him, "Do you need any help?" And he was quite reluctant to say yes, but after some persuasion, he said, "Yes, I would like some help." So the woman said, "Your car the engine is not running, it's cold, why don't you go and sit in my car?" So he had to move to the women's car, and he thought maybe the woman is going to just start his car and then drive away with his expensive car and leaving her old car with him. But after half an hour, she somehow was able to start the car. And she said she was a mechanic, that's why she could repair. And the man thanked her. And the doctor, what happened was he was as egoistic as he was. He took a bunch of notes from his wallet and offered it to the woman. And the woman said, "No, thank you, because I didn't expect anything from you. I'm doing it as a selfless service." So the doctor replied, "Okay, how can I repay you back?" So she said, "The same way I did to you." And from that day onwards, the man started searching. How can he repay back to some other people? And so he kept on thinking, and one day, as he was sitting in a restaurant, he saw the waiter who was actually clutching his stomach, and he was serving everybody. So he said, asked him the reason why he was having. So he said, "I'm having a stomach problem." And when the doctor checked his stomach physically, he realized that he needed an urgent surgery because almost his hernia was going to be ruptured. So immediately he took him to the hospital, and when he was in the hospital, he did the surgery, performed the surgery, and then the man was taken to his room. And 10 minutes later, the wife came and was attending to the man, and so the wife was having a conversation with him and asked him, how did you come here? So he said, a kind doctor took me and he operated me and did everything. And so the woman said, we don't have the money to pay back to the hospital. So how are we going to do that? So as they were sitting there and pondering, this doctor immediately walked into the room. And as the eyes of the doctor and the woman met each other, they just kept looking at each other and staring at each other, and tears started coming out of their eyes because it was the same woman that had helped the doctor. So Amma says, when we really have such compassion to each other and an outlook which is very compassionate, then we can arise from these differences of being a man and a woman. And especially also the fact that one of the beautiful expressions that has been coined is, differently abled than disabled. Because in one sense, we are all disabled mentally, may not be physically. So in one sense, so we can identify in that sense with the physically disabled. And when we make fun of them, or when we say that, when we look down upon them, as Amma says, always when you point a finger, there are 4 fingers pointed towards you. So we don't see that all the problems that we have. So when we think about this, again, what is the solution? Amma says the solution is compassion and love that we show to each other. And again, as I said, to conclude, I would say that, the mother's form, the woman as being the mother, as Amma always says, it is the most beautiful form and it's the most powerful form. And imagine, like today, Amma has come in that form of a mother as well as of a woman. And she was, as we had described yesterday, Swamiji was describing yesterday, she rose up from being an ordinary person with so much of difficulties to such a height today. Why? Because of her resilience, her mental strength, and the fact that she knew that there was inner strength in her. And it's much more higher than anything. And what was her inner strength? Compassion. Every situation, Amma was thinking, what can I give? And not what can I take? So just imagine, Amma has given hugs to more than 40 million people today. And all around the world. Just imagine for a moment if she had come in the form of a man. I'm not making fun of men, sorry. And men hugging people. It won't be as sweet and as beautiful as what Amma does today. And so the motherly hug, the motherly love, and the motherly inherent nature of a woman is her power. And I would like to thank all of you, and especially for giving this opportunity, and may that compassion and love rise in each other, where we will go beyond the distinction of being a man, a woman, and able and disabled. Om Amriteshwari Namah.
With the same applauses, let's welcome Dr. Priya Nair, Working Group Coordinator for Integrated Health. Dr. Priya. She's the Working Group Coordinator for Integrated Health and Integrated and Holistic Health. My apologies and thank you.
Om Amriteshwari Namaha. My humble prostrations to Amma, to Swamiji and all the dignitaries here on and off the dais. I'll keep it very brief. I I have had the esteemed honor of being one of the coordinators for the C20 working group on integrated holistic health. We completed our summit 2 weeks ago in Faridabad at Amrita Hospitals, and it's very heartening to join the Summit for Gender Equality and Disability and to hear that even though we are supposedly two different working groups, ultimately we are all speaking the same language, we are saying the same exact things. In integrated holistic health, based on the inspiration given to us by Amma, our concept of health, we have tried to broaden it, we have tried to expand it. As we all know, the trajectory of our concept of health through the ages has it's changed. It started as an individual where we thought health depended on the human body. Gradually we recognized that it depends on the people around us. Therein was born the concept of public health. As the world grew smaller, we started discussing global health. We realized that we are not only human species, but we are interdependent on animals, and the concept of One Health came, and now we are currently talking on planetary health. However, health has to go back to the ancient concepts of health, wherein we recognize that just physical health alone or looking outward alone is not really going to help us understand how to maintain health. We need to move inwards as well. Mental health, emotional health, spiritual health, socio-cultural health, and therein was born the concept of integrated holistic health, which is what we are working on. So I was here when the final output of the breakout sessions on women's health was discussed. It's essentially the same things that we are talking, and I just thought I'd share the top 5, just list the top 5 selections, or when we had gone through the very same voting process. The first or the highest voted concept was on adolescent health, especially in and around issues of nutrition. We aim or we hope to be able to ensure that women are nourished far before they reach the stage of pregnancy, during their adolescence, from childhood itself. The second is around, like many of you have already discussed, sexual and menstrual health and hygiene, especially the stigma that surrounds that, and being able to break that stigma is going to be the first and most important aspect when it comes to trying to improve women's sexual and menstrual hygiene. Third is healthcare access for women and vulnerable groups, including LGBTQ. That's something that's very near and dear to all of our hearts. And last but not at all the least is trying to promote women in leadership positions when it comes to public health care and healthcare delivery, as well as we talk a lot about research and the need to further understand and further our science, but when you look at healthcare research, it's still very male-based. You look at something as simple as heart attack. They have not yet bothered to look at, do you need to treat male and female differently for a heart attack? It's all just considered as one. So the need to be able to further gender-based research, to be able to give proper health care to women based on their differences in their physical structure and physical requirements. These are the top 5 that have been picked for integrated holistic health. And as I've been given to believe, ultimately C20 policy packs will all be one, and what was discussed here with all of you will be written up by all of us together. So I hope that we can have a very comprehensive output at the end of this entire C20 process. I would like to end very quickly on a personal note. I had the incredible fortune of talking about healthcare leadership. I had the incredible fortune of being I grew up in Amma's ashram. I was only 3 when our family had moved there. And in all honesty, many of you might have met Amma, many of you will have the opportunity to meet Amma. When you meet Amma, she sees each one of us as perfect. We have the potential to become anything, to do anything. And when you have the honor to grow up with somebody like that, you don't really feel that there is any inequality. whether you're a man or a woman or whatever you are. So I was never really exposed to the feeling that I was inferior to anybody else until I had gone to medical school. And through the medical school process, many of you here are doctors, and I'm sure you will understand that confusion that goes on when you try to select your specialty. So we start to ask our professors as to, what should we take? And I wanted desperately to become a surgeon. And some of my professors started to say, no, you can't become a surgeon. You're a woman and, you should be careful. Your physical, it'll be too strenuous for you. And I was put down with regards to becoming a surgeon. So competitiveness takes a front spot, and I decided no matter what, I'm going to become a surgeon. And finally I went to Amma and I said, I have to become a surgeon because I want to show that a woman can become the best surgeon as well. But that wasn't given the same applause by Amma. She looked at me and she said, please do not decide to become a surgeon so that you can become better than a man. Become a doctor as the perfect woman. And if you become a doctor as the perfect woman and show how the perfect woman will become a doctor, then you will become the perfect doctor that you can be. So I pray that all of us, male, female, or however we identify, can become the perfect versions of our own selves, and that we can inspire women all over the world to become the perfect version of what they can be, their infinite potential. I pray that Amma's grace blesses us all to achieve this. Namaste.
Thank you so much, Dr. Priya. I think we already have a glimpse of Amma's strength and sweetness through Dr. Priya's talk. Moving on, let's hear about the existing gender equality government policies. For that, I'll request Dr. Bhavani Rao, India Coordinator, Gender Equality and Disability Working Group, to grace the occasion.
Hello, everyone, again. Thank you for joining us again today, after yesterday. My job over here is to just reflect on the country's strategies for gender equality and link it a little bit to our discussions yesterday and see how well our country is doing and what we could possibly do in terms of our communication on how we could make things better. And I'm keeping this very India-centric because I feel that while the entire talk has been pushing towards the G20 level, we could come out with some strong recommendations for the country level also. Might as well make the most of it, and that's why I'm keeping this reflection a little bit more India-centric. So as you know, the statistics, the global gender gap, and that was published, India ranks pretty much at the bottom of the 154 countries. Typically they measure the outcomes in terms of economic participation, education, health, and survival and political environment. And of course, all of us know in India that the government has a huge number of schemes that address various aspects of gender equality. One of the ones that we know that is out there and is probably the most popularized is the Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao scheme, the Mahila Shakti Kendra, working women hostels, Mahila police volunteers. There are, I would say, at least 25 to 30 specific gender policies and schemes that are there in the country. Apart from that, there is a strong push to identify and strengthen the processes and identify reform areas and reform actions, as well as monitor the performance of these schemes. We know that these processes are in place. Let us take a little closer look at these in the perspective of what we have been discussing in the breakout rooms. So if you can go to the next slide. So from the discussions yesterday, these are the four, maybe I should just, so I don't sprain my neck. I'll just have my computer on. So on safety and security, we have identified the top priority areas as government funding to increase safety, engaging men and boys, workplace safety, action plan to prevent and address gender-based violence. And we can go next and we can see what it is there already. And again, this is not an exhaustive list because if I put all the different schemes, it runs over my page. So I've just selected the top few and presented it over here. We do have the Nirbhaya Fund, which is, again, increased funds for government funding for increasing safety. We have the Ujjwala scheme, which is to prevent trafficking and rescue and rehabilitation of and reintegration of victims, the Voxat victims, protection of women from domestic violence, the Criminal Law Act of 2013, the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace, and the Prevention, Prohibition and Redressal Act of 2013. We know that these are in place, but what we have identified was probably what we can extract from our policy recommendations is that we probably need to make sure that the legal and structural barriers, they need addressing, and we need to have gender-sensitive, inclusive standard operating procedures. This is what has come out from our discussions. Also, what is interesting is that from our discussions, it's come out that community-based mechanisms is something that we need to really promote a lot more in terms of gender-based. I see a lot of the audience, it's your voices that is being echoed over here. Also, safe responders. These are the main items that are coming out as gaps in policy. You can go next. And in terms of economic empowerment and sustainable livelihoods, access to finance and accountability for loan refusal, procurement from women-owned micro, small, and medium enterprises, implementation of the G20 roadmap towards and beyond the Brisbane goal, jobs and skill development in green and blue economies. These are the main ideas that came out of those discussions. We do see that there are actually so many schemes, you can go next, that are available, like the Mahila e-Heart. I'm sure that Meg brought this up in our conversation. There is an online platform that is available to women entrepreneurs, the Stand Up India scheme, the Mudra loan scheme. There is also a public procurement policy from MSME. There are also other kind of supporting things like working women hostels, the Rashtriya Mahila Kosh. There's actually quite a few on the economic empowerment side of it. But I think what seems to come out is that there is a lack of awareness and a lack of capacity among women to access these schemes. Either that they do not know that these schemes are available to them, or there are other inhibitions that really restrict how well women can access these opportunities. That was the main discussions point that came out, and also promoting the green and the blue economies. We know that 40% of any country's population lives along the coastlines and is dependent on coastlines for their economies, and therefore the blue economy becomes very significant. And of course, in the light of climate change, environmental degradation and extinction of species, it is very important for us to also look at the green economy. So you can go next. In education and skill development, our voices together have set to prioritize the last mile connectivity, girls in all their diversity, not just girls, is readiness for the future of work, gender parity in education and skill development. And you notice that, again, even in education and skill development, again, I've only listed a few, the Samagra Shikshan Abhiyan, the Skill Initiative, Skill India Initiative, Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, Mahila Shakti Kendra, many of these schemes, and especially our Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been really in his speeches pushing a lot towards Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, and actually, in fact, also, if I may mention that women-led development is one of the key agendas of the entire G20 India presidency. So the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the Sherpa Amitabh Kant have taken great pain to send letters to all the engagement groups and all the Sherpa tracks to make sure that gender equality is a conversation that happens in every one of these tracks. So I feel very sure that our conversation is definitely going to make its way all the way up to the G20 recommendations simply because of this thrust that is coming. So we have a very conducive government to push our agenda, and so that's why also I feel we have to keep it, we also have to have one side looking at how we can make it India-centric, and so within our country, how can we make sure we strengthen what we already have. Yes. In terms of coming back to education and skill development, a lot of people said that the last mile connectivity is where things really break down, and therefore we really need to strengthen the last mile connectivity. The future of work is changing. In fact, there is an entire whole day program that is dedicated to the future of work happening in Odisha, Bhubaneswar, under the G20 Education Sherpa track, not too far away. Of course, education parity, gender parity in education and skill development program, and the lack of gender disaggregated data in terms of both education and in terms of work. Moving on to the environment and disasters, I'm trying to keep it really short. Our priorities have been the knowledge of the indigenous communities and climate justice, promoting access to clean and safe water, land access, acquisition and stewardship, inclusive disaster preparedness and relief. These are the main recommendations that have come out of us. And while we have a National Disaster Management Agency, there are also some dedicated programs that actually look at women's stewardship towards the environment, especially in terms of water, also the Mahila Kisan Sashaktikaran Pariyojana. We know also that in the recent past, in the last few years, there's been actually a lot of recognition of indigenous knowledge. We know that actually even from Orissa, we have a Padma Shri awardee winner who is an indigenous tribal lady who possesses tremendous knowledge. And you've seen that, whether it's from Orissa, from Karnataka, very rich indigenous knowledge being appreciated at the national level. What remains to be done is to capture this knowledge. If you see the photographs, they're really old ladies, and what have we put into place to actually capture and retain that knowledge? That is the next level, otherwise we lose the knowledge. So the recognition of this indigenous knowledge systems definitely is in place. We probably need stronger ways to actually capture and transfer this knowledge. The other thing is women's participation in land and water. It seems to have come up, but not just land and water, in basically all natural resource management. I think we can extrapolate it too, and definitely there is a glaring gap in inclusivity in disaster preparedness and relief programs. I'm not sure the NDMA has that many women actually, so. Okay, physical and mental health. Now we know that mental health is the big topic. It's the elephant in the room, whether you're talking about our school children and our college students, but also among women. And COVID basically pushed this vulnerability in our faces. And so now we can actually acknowledge it, not be ashamed of it, and talk about it and then deal with it. And of course, overall healthcare is a beautiful talk given by Dr. Priya, and there's a lot of synergy between the two working groups, and they're working very closely together. Human trafficking and the flesh trade, this has been around since the beginning of time, and we still, as a community, have not been able to address this issue. Global well-being. Yes, I think they're telling me to speak faster. But just to reflect a little bit more on the comprehensive mental health and education, there have been, ultimately, we can talk about what the government needs to do. We also need to know what we can also ourselves bring into our institutions. For example, Amrita has been working a lot on mental health, both with the student communities as well as rural communities, but also on mental health in engaging men and boys. Now, we have to also reflect, when we are making these recommendations, how best institutionally we are also making it a part of ourselves. Again, the health is probably one of the most well covered in terms of national health policies. But here, again, what could be more robust is the mental health education and community-based mental health services. This is probably one of the biggest missing links. And of course, in terms of, I've clubbed disability into the health section because just it would fit easier, is to provide accessible supportive healthcare for people with disabilities and also women with disabilities, and to make sure that there is gender disaggregated data that is available. Because only when we have that data will we know where exactly the gaps are, and this is something that has come out quite significantly. In terms of gender sense, social and cultural, we have clubbed the engaging men and boys into this because this is one way we can actually strengthen the social cultural norms to, I wouldn't say social strengthen it, but to make ourselves better as a society and improve our culture. So gender sensitization training, we do have gender sensitization training, improve legal systems for gender-based violence, improve gender mainstreaming implementation, and international multilateral women's ministries. These are the main recommendations that came up. If you go next, this is probably one of the places where we have schemes actually, but they're not as many and as not as strong. Because even in our discussions, we realize forming policies around socio-cultural elements is a little hard. Because this is where we need to take ownership as people. It's not something that can be really enforced on you as a government, but we still can do some things. And those some things is definitely having comprehensive gender and masculinity transformative education. So it links back to education because that's one of the fundamental areas where you build beliefs, you create culture and knowledge. So and the easiest way to actually reach the masses is through education, where you shift perspectives, and therefore once you have a generational change, then things become easier. But also very strongly that we involve men and boys in the conversations. Not doing so, when we alienate them, it can actually just exacerbate vulnerabilities later on. And the other, I would say, cross-cutting element that came across through our conversation, if you go next, is gender mainstreaming. It doesn't matter what area, but gender mainstreaming is something that everyone has expressed should be something that is cross-cutting. In India, we do have some national policies and schemes for gender mainstreaming. We have the gender budgeting and the national policy for the empowerment of women. Sorry, the mistake is 2011. This is actually a very interesting policy. I'm not quite sure how much people have actually leveraged it and how effective it's been, but it's actually a pretty interesting policy. So it is designed to be a comprehensive gender mainstreaming policies across all government policies, programs, and budgets. So it works at the government level, and it's supposed to bring that gender sensitization at all levels of the government. This is not something probably that directly impacts us, but it's probably something that's good for our politicians to know and our bureaucrats to know, I guess. So in one of the takeaways I think that we have here as a part of this entire exercise and this journey is that it also allowed us to reflect on what were the best practices that we had, just like every one of you sent in udaharans on what were the best practices that you had. And it was a wonderful reflection for us because we have Amma as our chancellor, and the fact, the kind of gender equality and the kind of, we don't have the kind of hurdles in so many ways at the university because we have Amma as a chancellor. We have most of our top management women, there are 5 working groups under Amrita, and all 5 are headed by women. So it's a bit of a gender imbalance even over there. So it's just that exposure that, and we, in some ways, I think those of us at Amrita have been a little privileged, but this entire exercise has also helped us reflect that it's not necessarily that easy for a lot of different people. We're in that way a little, and Amma has actually enabled those things for us. And so, yeah, so again, it has been very rewarding and enriching for us. And thank you again for being a part of the process. I know there is still more to go for the rest of the day, but this is almost like a recap of what has happened yesterday. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Indeed, there's a lot of energy and synergy on the topic. Very difficult to capture everything in words with the limited time. So we have figured out a better way. Let's take a group picture. So I invite all the international delegates, all the guests, Shri Vijayanambiya ji, Sir please, Pujya Swami ji, Amrita Swarupanand Puri ji, and all our discussants, participants who have come so far, and also the international team, which has been traveling with us all the way. And so much work has been done in the last few months with a lot of drive and energy towards formation of policies in the next coming few months. So I invite everybody to let's jump on stage quickly so that we can capture the wonderful energy.
Not everybody on stage, we can have layers. If everybody's on stage, you won't be able to capture it. Really? Everybody on stage?
Not the students, but international.
When did you say that?
I'll do as students start coming. Yeah. 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 We'll have a photo with the students a little later. I invite all participants who have come so far, all discussants, international delegates, coordinators of the C20, members of the working group, to please come on the dais with bright beaming faces, and let's capture the synergy of the moment.
Tell people where to go. The chairs need to go on the side.
I request everybody to please follow our team with the positions. This is only for the participants, discussants, and the team. Later on, we'll take a photo with the participants. For the discussants. We'll have another round of photos with the participants. We have a flooding stage. I request your patience. I request everybody to please follow our onstage managers regarding your positions. I would request the predominant presence of discussants, delegates who have joined us from far to grace the occasion. I request the guests and working group coordinators to please come to the front. Dr. Bhavani, can you please join us at the front row? Dr. Bhavani, there's a request to please join us at the front row. There she is on the left. I again request for the predominance of the discussants, international panelists who have come so far, and our esteemed guests. With the other participants, we are going to have another round of pictures in a short while. Thank you. I request everybody on dais to please smile so that we can capture the picture. I request the photographers to do the quick honors. I request the smiling faces on stage to kindly face the camera. Can we please look straight towards the cameras? They are already well positioned to capture our faces. I think more than the positions, it would be the brightness of the face which would count more. Let's just look at the flashes and capture the synergy of the moment. Okay, can everybody join me in saying C20 with a smile on their faces? C20. I request the guests to take the lead in this. One last round of smiles again from everybody. And let's capture the moment. Okay, let's take it at the count of 3. 3, 2, and 1. Let's have a louder C20. C20. I'm sure this will go as a momentous occasion in this summit, and you will be able to reflect upon the synergy that we have gathered through it. Post the group photo. We are breaking for 10 minutes for a coffee break. please come back to the hall. We have an workshop on world peace, meditation and gender equality after 10 minutes for the coffee break. So we break for 10 minutes and we come back quickly to the hall as assembled together for the world peace and meditation workshop. Thank you. For your information, coffee is being served at the banquet hall. Like yesterday, we are breaking for 10 minutes for the coffee. Those who wish to have coffee, please move on to the banquet hall for the coffee break of 10 minutes, post which we are assembling here in the main auditorium for a workshop on world peace. Thank you, everybody.